quite a challenge for me what Dieter gave me. And the question is a theology of right relations. We had a phone call, so I'm going to run quickly then through quite a lot to be said in such a short space of time. So I'm going to speak fast and I'll go fast. Right, so when we are dealing, when we want to even stop and think about a right relationship to this world, where are we going? Where do we need to start? And there are three things that, as I see it, that we need to consider is worldview, culture, and the gospel. And so the first thing to just consider a moment is a worldview. And when we raise the question, worldview, what is it? I have been around, we've been around for decades. And often, people use words, but when we ask for a definition to understand what are you talking about, we are very unclear with regards to that which we are talking about. And if we are unclear, people leave more confused than what they go away informed or having learned something. So the first question to ask then is, what is a worldview? So the next slide. And here I've taken a quote from James Sire, The Universe Next Door, which I think is probably one of the best layperson's definitions of what a worldview is. And he says a worldview is a commitment. It's a fundamental orientation of the heart that can be expressed as a story or in a set of presuppositions. For us, we've been around, presupposition, assumptions, we talk about these things, but what is a presupposition? It is an assumption. It is something I assume to be so without even realizing that I necessarily believe it or what it is. But assumptions come out in engagement in relationships with people. We don't realize it. But I mean, Dieter, if you'd stand up a moment, right? So here is Dieter. You can just see, Dieter's big. I mean, this guy is just huge, right? So now I can meet Dieter and I think, yes, like this guy's got 2 earrings, his ponytail. He's looking down at me. And suddenly I dislike him. And it's like, I just seen this guy. What is wrong with it that, inside? And I don't even realize it, but I'm assuming this guy looks like somebody that's aggressive. And because I'm aggressive, he's challenging me just because of who he is. And I don't even realize that I've got a problem. But I believe something about reality because there's a commitment deep within. And he just annoys me and I look at him. It's like, yeah, you know what? We're not going to be friends. And I don't know why. Because there's something I believe, there's something he represents. His very presence that comes at me immediately is pushing something that I believe that I don't know. And then I'm going to have to say, all right, what's wrong with me? What am I believing that's wrong? Because I don't even know him. Just seen him, right? That's how, thanks, Dieter. You see, that's what an assumption is. So we hold these things, these presuppositions about life. Now they may be true, partially true, or entirely false. That we hold them consciously, unconsciously, consistently, or inconsistently. And so we live, and then sometimes I do something and it's like, well, I say I believe that I should be kind and courteous to everybody because that is an expression of Christ, and then suddenly I'm rude to him. Whoa, okay, why? Why am I rude towards him? So I hold my worldview inconsistently. Right? And we need to be aware of that. And it's about the basic constitution of reality. It's how we understand reality in which we live. How do we explain it? Right? And so it provides the foundation on which we live and move and have our being. So worldviews are very deep. Now, here are the key components of a worldview. And I'm going to go quickly through this. They are, for example, the question of God, the question of humanity, morality, meaning, destiny. What do people believe about these things? What do they instinctively believe without even having thought through it? But we have a motion within ourselves. We have a movement. People talk about these things. And especially when they say something that I don't believe to be true. Then I get annoyed or angry. I want to argue or so on. You know, instead of realizing, wait a minute, I got to learn, I got to understand what people are saying. Now, here is something just about God. The fact of the matter is, we cannot talk about anything without knowing something about what we're talking about. It's a mouthful, right? So if somebody says, they make the following statement. Yeah, God is there, but you cannot know anything about him. What am I claiming to know? I'm claiming to know that I know something about God. And I'm claiming to know about God that you cannot know him. Yeah. Now, that statement is contradictory. It's either true or false. If you say you cannot know about God, if I really say you cannot know about God, then I say, what on earth are you talking about? That's a proper response. Explain to me the word God. What does it mean? You see, and this is how worldviews work. So now, when we deal with this, just take the question of God. This I found, look at this from Mortimer Adler. When he was asked, he put this series of 50 volumes of the greatest books in the world together. And he starts from the earliest philosophers and he goes through. In this greatest books of the world, there's more pages written about God than any other topic. When Mortimer Adler, that put this together, was asked why, he said the following: more consequences for life and action follow from the affirmation or denial of God than from any other basic question. Because whatever we believe about God is going to impact how we answer every other question and struggle we have in life. Now, let me just take you through some ideas. All right, go to the next slide. Now, that's who Mortimer Adler is, a brilliant man. Right, so here I'm just looking now a little bit about God and the origins. This goes all the way, this is Greek mythology. Hesiod in his book Theology. Let's read it. And so you can push the button again. This is Hesiod, right, talking about God. He says, "Hail, children of Zeus, grant lovely song and celebrate the holy race of the deathless gods," plural, "who are forever, those that were born of earth and starry heaven and gloomy night, and them that briny sea did rear. Tell how at the first gods and earth came to be." This is Greek mythology, raising the very question about God. What is that which is eternal? Next slide. He goes on, and listen to what he says here. "Verily, at the first chaos came to be." Not chaos was eternal. Chaos at a point was not and then became. Right? "But next, wide-bosomed earth, the ever-sure foundations of all the deathless ones who hold the peaks of snowy Olympus and dim Tartarus in the depth of the wide path earth, Eros, fairest among the deathless gods, who unnerves the limbs and overcomes the mind, and wise counsels of all gods and all men within them." You know, if you go and you read the Iliad by Homer, if you watch the movie Troy, it's based on the Iliad. Now, the movie it's terrible compared to reading the Odyssey, the Iliad by Homer, because you can see how Eros plays such a big role in how she affects man's fortunes on the earth. Keep going. In his book Hesiod and Works and Days, this is what he goes on to say. Next slide. "For the gods keep hidden from men the means of life." Isn't that interesting? So what do you learn about then the gods? "Else you would easily do work enough in a day to supply you for a full year, even without working. Soon would you put away your rudder over the smoke, and the fields worked by ox and sturdy mule would run to waste. But Zeus, in the anger of his heart, hid it, because Prometheus the crafty deceived him. Therefore he planned sorrow and mischief against men. He hid fire." Zeus hid fire. And so, but that the noble son of Iapetus stole again 4 men from Zeus the counselor in a hollow fennel stalk, so that Zeus, who delights in thunder, did not see it. But afterwards Zeus, who gathers the clouds, said to him in anger. So Prometheus stole fire from Zeus, which Zeus withheld from human beings. So Zeus gets angry, and what does Zeus then say? Next slide. Son of Iapetus, surpassing all in cunning, you are glad that you've outwitted me and stolen fire, a great plague to you yourself and to men that shall be. But I will give men as the price for fire an evil thing in which they may all be glad of heart while they embrace their own destruction. What is the evil thing that Zeus gave? Just push it. So the father of men and gods, so said the father of men and gods, laughed aloud, and he bade famous Hephaestus make haste, mix earth with water, and put in it the voice and strength of humankind, and fashion a sweet, lovely maiden shape. What did he do? He told Hephaestus to make a woman as the punishment for Prometheus that stole fire. So what's the value of a woman? Yeah. Now, so you look at this. Her name is Pandora. And he called this woman Pandora because all they who dwelt on Olympus gave each a gift, a plague to men who eat bread. So what is the nature of a woman? She is a plague to humankind. You stop and listen in Western civilization. Where is the conflict and what are the jokes always? Between men and women. And you know what? Western men can make jokes about women, and the women are like, oh, really? But it shows that what we really believe in our heart goes more to this understanding of the way we view men and women than the scriptures. Right? But as if it, gets any better. Who knows who Credo Mutwa is? Credo Mutwa. All right, next slide. Credo Mutwa. Well, let's see what Africa has to say. Right. The story of our life came to this earth, and the one who was telling me this story was none other than the Creator herself. What? Oh, well. Eternity is a vast and incredibly lonely darkness. Yeah, so for us whiteys, we look at the Greeks, and you darkies, this is your story. Anyway, continue. I did not create the universe and the earth and the life upon it out of my own free will. I obeyed the order of a great master who, for all that I know, in turn has to obey the orders of an even greater master. The heavens conceal more secrets than even I can understand. Even I was told to do as instructed and ask no questions. I've got African friends, and I always goad them. Say to them, why do you just accept everything people say? Why don't you question? Not arrogantly, not like you see some politicians, but ask to learn. Because fundamental in the worldview is that you just obey, you don't question. Next slide. He goes on. Then what is the purpose of life on earth, O great goddess? Do I understand there really is none at all? Listen to what he says. The only purpose of life is death. The man is born, and before he dies, he gets the opportunity to ensure that others after him will also be born and die. You may deceive yourselves by thinking that there is more to life than birth, growth, mating, old age, and death, but sooner or later, naked truth makes itself apparent. Next slide. Then what is the purpose of life on earth? Then what is the purpose of life? It is to die. Yeah. Now, look, I'm probably going to be treading on some toes, but you read African traditional religious views and philosophy. What's the goal of life? To die, to go into the community hereafter, to the community of the living dead. Because when you get into the community of the living dead, you gain power and control, and then you influence people on the earth. You see, these ideas We don't want to hear it, but we got to face it that all of us are being, there's something in the world, way we view reality and understand it, that there is a corruption in it. We are not biblically Christian. We are seeking to become biblically Christian, but we are struggling in the process. Now you'll note this. One of the biggest challenges here in South Africa, a friend of mine from Nigeria he said an associate there did a sociological research on Southern Africa. You know what is found amongst the tribal peoples of Southern Africa? They're matrilineal, not patrilineal. The power resides with the woman, not with the men. Yeah? Where does the power reside amongst the Boera? I'm the father of the house. I'm the head of the home. Yeah, I've heard this quoted so many times. The culture that I have to live. And so when we look then just in Southern Africa, where's our clash? We think it's external when we look at the color of the skin. It's not the color of the skin. It's ideas we hold about reality. That is a challenge. What is the race of an idea? It's a false question. It's a false question. Ideas are not a race. Ideas are thoughts that we hold, or things that we believe. There's no ethnicity to it. And that's where our battle is. As one apologist put it, where all ideas are not equal. And he went on to say this, when you make all ideas equal, you will get a superiority amongst humanity. When you recognize that all ideas are not equal, you get equality amongst humanity. And ideas go about, are they true or not? Oh, I tell you, go to the next. Look at now what the scriptures say. Do we believe this? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The repeated refrain is, it was good. This material world is good. God created mankind in his own image, and he blessed them. Right? Now, look at worldviews. We hear what the scripture is saying. We don't hear because our worldviews aren't transformed. But we actually believe things about life and reality that are not biblical. And this is rooted at the level of worldview. Dieter, it's 12 o'clock. I haven't even gotten through.
Keep going.
Shall I keep going? All right. So here is the next slide. The best way that I know how to, out of reading everything, is James Hine, his book, The Universe Next Door. You read it, you have to read it about 20 times. At least I have to read it 50 times. I'm not that smart to understand what he's saying. But what he did was a very good, he put together a list of 8 questions. And so you can just click the slide. These are all the questions. What is the prime reality? The eternally existent. What is God? The nature of external reality. That is this world in which we live. What is a human being? Oh, you know how difficult that is. What happens to a human being at death? Why is it possible to know anything at all? How do we know what is right and wrong? What is the meaning of human history? And then the last one, what personal life-orienting core commitments are consistent with this worldview? And this, when we answer this and we hear what the truth of the gospel is, it must change everything in the way we're going to relate to the world. Now, in summary, a theistic worldview would be as follows. You can just go to the next slide. God exists in and beyond the world. The world was created ex nihilo, meaning created out of nothing. So God is eternal. He brought the material existence into the material universe into existence. Miracles are possible. People are made in God's image. There is a moral law. Rewards and punishment await in the life hereafter. Right? Now, please understand, I have taken volumes to try and whittle it down. There is so much that needs to be understood in a worldview. And we need to understand something. Just go to the, no, I don't think it's, So when we are dealing with wanting to have a theology of right relations, we've got to have a right relationship with God. So we've got to know God for who he is and what God must necessarily be as a being called God. We need to then understand in what he is, who he is, right? Then we got to understand the world that he made. How do we understand it? We need to understand what a human being is. We need to understand what's wrong with the world, right? All these questions are hugely significant if we are going to engage the world with wisdom. So let me go on to the next one, and here let's step on some toes. I mean, look, I'm just trying to help everybody think a little bit bigger about things. Culture. What is culture? Everybody knows, right? Oh, I tell you, I have been in situations where they say, oh, culture, culture, culture. I say, all right, wait a minute. Please define for me what you mean, so at least we all got a definition of what you mean. But in my experience, nobody knows what culture is, but everybody uses the word. So, what is culture? Let me give you some definitions. The first definition of culture on the next slide is, before I get there with the definition, let's skip the next slide and go to the one after that where we deal with the definition of culture. Just go to the next slide. For time's sake, I can't go through all of this. What is culture? One definition is culture is learned and shared attitudes, values, and ways of behaving. I don't know about you, it says nothing to me. It's very shallow. Or culture is a total way of life of a group of people that is learned, adaptive, shared, and integrated. Each of these four characteristics, learned, adaptive, shared, and integrated, reflects important elements of the cultural concept. Well, that is a very new definition of the early millennium. And I think both are very weak. Then there goes the definition, 1800s. Culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by a human as a member of society. So when we're talking about culture, I'm talking about things that, for example, I as a white, bilingual South African holds is different to an Afrikaans-speaking South African and a white English-speaking only South African. There are ways, there are things that we hold, beliefs, our understanding of art, which is customary law. All of those things. It's unique to our different groups within our country, just amongst the white people. Now, let's go over to the Indian folk. And I tell you, you guys, no, don't worry. You Indian guys, you got it all together. You're all in agreement, right? Sorry, that is facetious. I'm sorry. I've got a terrible sense of humor. But we all know that you're African. Yeah, you guys, man, you're all in agreement, right? Yeah, not at all. The colored community. Yes, we know, right? You got to be kidding me. Anyway, I've got stories to tell. Let's not go there. We don't have time. Now, note this. When we look at culture in the next slide, you note that all these elements, knowledge, how do you know what you know? Who are the guardians and custodians of knowledge? Who teaches who? Where do you learn what you need to know in order to function in society? Next one, your belief, your religious beliefs. What do you just hold inherently? And so whether you like it or not, this is what I'm going to tell you. In South Africa, you've got a very strong patrilineal thing. Not everything is patrilineal or the white male hierarchy. No, I'm using the word patrilineal. Not everything is patrilineal because there's a large influence of matrilinealness in our country. And those two clash. Clashes big time. We don't even realize it. We don't even know. Next, art. How we understand art. How we view art. It communicates what's in our heart and our being. And we look at art and we say, that just ministers to my soul. It refreshes me. It's different. Next, morals. I can tell you what, reading through all this stuff and studying it and engaging different communities, going to other cultures overseas and so on, there are morals that people hold, and then you ask them why? Why do you believe that? Right? So, Guys, I'm sorry, I'm not picking on Africans. I'm just telling you some things that I've come to learn. I thought, woo, that's interesting. And I test these things. So when mom and dad fight, whose side must the kids always take? Mom. Even if she's wrong, you always support mom. Why? Credo Mutwa explains that in his book, Indaba My Children. We don't even know why, we just do it. I got this one friend of mine, is an African pastor in Pretoria. I said, in France, got a question for you, brother. He says, yeah. I said, when, in the African culture, back there in Soshanguve where you live, when a husband and wife fight, you always take the side of your mom, even if she's wrong. Without thinking, he says, yeah, no, it's that way. I said to him, did you hear what you just said? It's not about right and wrong. It's where the power lies. And suddenly he's like, wait a minute. I said, yeah, right? In the white culture, you guys know how it works. This is how it works. Dad gets home, I've had a terrible day. Everybody go to your room and keep quiet till I say things are better than you come out. And then mom goes and hides, and the kids go and hide. And it's like, really? Why? You see, we don't even know these things, but this is part of our morality that we hold, and every community, every culture has got this. Next, there is law custom. Here's a question for you. In African culture, who pays for the wedding? Sorry? Who pays for the wedding in African culture? The guy, yeah. When you've got a daughter, who pays for that daughter's wedding? Oh, the dad. Why? Do you know in Russia, it's also the guy. Do you know in India, it's also the woman. So you got these things, it's law custom. Right? Next. And it is any other capabilities and habits acquired by a human, right? That as a member of society. These things are transmitted, but it starts with a worldview. It then goes into how this community understands reality and life and shapes and fashions itself. Here's a question. Let me just ask you a question. Next slide. Note the following. What do you see? Let me tell you what I see. I see a guy that is a devout Muslim. Why? Because of his beard that is totally unkept. He doesn't shave it because that's a sign of devotion to Allah. Hashim Amla. Yeah, I see a white boo racist there. Actually, no. That is a photo I got from an American guy. So we're sitting in a meeting up in Pretoria, and this one guy, and this one friend of mine, loveliest guy, he also just grew his beard and everything, and so he's a white Afrikaner, and then I got some of my African friends and everything. I said, yeah, so let's go through the room. What do you see? And my pastor friend immediately says, you're a racist. I said, but you know him. He says, I know. He says, we're back in the township. When your beard looks like that, yes, boo, you're racist. Bottom line. Really? Okay, what else do you see? Let me tell you. I see a Muslim and a Christian. Who's the Muslim and the Christian? Well, the guy on the right is a Christian pastor from Nigeria. The guy on the left is a Muslim politician from Nigeria. Oh, Nigerians, we know what they like. But anyway, what else do you see? Well, depends again. What do you see? This is actually military gear that is hunting gear. It's not the same thing. Subtle differences. But what you're going to see and how you're going to interpret it is based on your fundamental beliefs about how a community views reality. So, the 4 pillars of communal bonding, the micro-family. These are the 4 things that universally is true about all human beings. One is marriage. Marriage and the attending marriage rituals are foundational to every community. Doesn't matter who you are. You've got ways in which protocols. Second is childbirth. Now, I mean, dare I say this, Dita, you guys, is this just for you guys? You're not going to put it on YouTube or something. So this colored friend of mine, when I when our daughter was born, he comes, he says, "Oh, John, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'll need to come back. Ek moet die pis betaal." I'm like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, no. In our colored community, when you have a child, you moet die pis betaal. Means you must go and buy a gift for the newborn child." Cultural practice. Yeah. You see, next is marriage, childbirth, coming of age. I say thank God for something, though it's somewhat perverted, which is the coming of age ceremonies, where at least the guys usually coming now in July, they go to the bush. Now, I've written an article for the newspaper, they actually published it. I say, maybe you should just change some of the practices, but don't do away with it. Certain things within it must maintain the concept, change some practices. We used to say when you turn 21, you have your 21st birthday. Can I tell you what the white people's general 21st birthday is? When you got money. There's money, go and party and get drunk, you're 21. And then you've got 40-year-old men living in a body, but in their hearts, they're 15, 16 years old, trying to get their dad's approval, who never gave it to them on their 21st birthday. To say to them, coming of age, you're a man. Yeah. Oh, but I did ask my friends, what's happening about the woman? Yeah, what's happened? Because you always read about the circumcision, you never read about what is the woman's coming of age in Africa. But you need it. Men and women need it. Everybody. If you don't do it, you got children living in adult bodies. Did it with my children, I tell you, changed their lives like this. From one day they're a child, the next day they're an adult. They act like adults. They go to other 21sts and they say, I don't have time. Why are you getting, I don't have time for this, and they leave. Because there's something sacred that must happen. Next, death. Every culture celebrates or mourns in a specific way. And let me tell you, one of the problems in South Africa, you might not realize this. On these four things, all cultures in our country are at odds with each other. We don't understand each other. We don't know why. And if we can't even meet each other here, do you think we're going to meet each other in a public forum on other issues? The church can't even do this. Right? Yeah, I mean, I live in Pretoria, I see it. I mean, this one African guy says to me, John, you white pastors. Yeah, you whiteys, eh? You want us Africans to actually reconcile with you. We have a funeral. We're waiting for one of you white pastors from the church because it's a member of your church. Just visit at the vigil on the last day of the funeral. You never come. And you want to know why we as black folk do not want to reconcile with you. You don't love us and care about us. Yeah. I'm like, whoa, dude. Okay. You see, so the problem then is we don't understand why we do what we do, right? We don't know, for example, these most intimate of communal things that touch the heart and celebrate life. Now, I mean, let me just tell you this one. I was at some years ago, I was at a pastor's meeting in Pretoria. Oh, my word, Lord Jesus, help us. So I'm the only white guy with 3 African lady pastors and 3 men pastors. And, now we've got to discuss something. It was a whole Black Lives Matter thing, and that whole thing there. So I'm sitting there. So I'm the only white guy in that group. And what does everybody do? Keeps quiet. So I keep quiet. Why? Because I'm a white guy. You majority African folks, speak up. So eventually one of the African pastors starts speaking. Doesn't look at me. Pretends like I'm not there. So eventually I said in the meeting, I said, here is the problem with you guys. You must realize you as African Christians are the majority in this country. When are you going to start witnessing to us as whites? When are you going to stand in the queue, in the shop, and say to the white person in front of you, excuse me, do you know Jesus? Have you been born again? When are you going to do it? And I tell you what I see, just in Pretoria, all the white folk in our there, Oh, we must be culturally sensitive to the African folk and the colored folk and all of that. Nonsense! When are the African and colored folk going to be culturally sensitive to us as white people? Because as long as what we always have to adapt to that Christian community, you will never see me as an equal. You'll always see yourself as less than me, that I must change to understand you. You never take the responsibility, so I must understand John. Yeah. So you know what this pastor said to me? He said, yeah, but white people think we're stupid. No. You think that about yourself. Stop it. Get a biblical view of your humanity. And then read some of what we read. Yeah. Study what the white people study. And then you come and then, you come and you say to this white, okay, bro, how's it? Broer, I'm just telling you, you got no clue about reality. Now, all you think about is, where you come from, some little cosmic soup, and yeah, you are. Let me tell you, there's a God that exists. Do you know how I know? Let me give you all the reasons. And then as an African, you start whipping the ground out from under white people that think they're so smart, because you know what their questions, what their struggles are, and how you can bridge the gap and witness to them that just challenge them to the core of their being. But you don't do it. Yeah. The most fascinating thing, so my friend France, and I tell you, I just wish he would fight more with me. He won't, because he's younger than what I am, and But I've also upset him so much, but he won't say anything, because you know what, in African culture, what do you not do? You don't disagree with the authority. You just when you're offended or so, and you keep quiet because you must respect the authority. And I was saying to him, France, you got to fight with me. You got to disagree with me. You can get angry with me. I want that, so that we can know each other. But the most fascinating thing is, he learns to speak some Afrikaans. So then people say to me, John, I need somebody to come and pray for my family member. They're sick, or prophetic word, or whatever. What is France's phone number? They want my African friend from Soshanguve to travel to come and preach to the and minister to the white Afrikaners in Pretoria East that's got all the money. Because he learns to speak Afrikaans. He says, John, hoe gaan het? He starts speaking Afrikaans. And then we actually find that we are brothers, because he's also stepped over into my world. And I've tried to step over into his world. And then we find each other. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street, this. Now, again, let me just tell you. You can go to the next slide. Oh, Lord Jesus. Just about society. Note the following about a society. Humans are naturally social and form societies. Next, we crave companionship. Furthermore, we cannot take care of ourselves alone. We need each other. And then language fits humans to communicate with each other. And lastly, intellectual and moral development require constant communication of ideas. It's the only way we're going to change things in our country. Now, next slide. Here are some amazing literature by Africans that I've read. Credo Mutwa was a witch doctor. He died in the first week of lockdown in 2020. They actually asked the president to give him a state funeral. The president said no. The most influential voice in Wits University in the humanities. John Mbiti, African Religion and Philosophy. One of the most difficult books I've read for more than a decade already, to try and fathom the depth of what he's saying. But an insight into Africa that just is mind-blowing. Do you know that certain African tribes do not consider somebody human until possibly they've procreated? Yeah, that's some of the African thinking on our continent. And the problem is, Credo Mutwa's thinking is the masses. It's what people generally believe. So my daughter is studying psychology at University of Pretoria, and I educate my kids on this. So she comes one day, she says to me, Daddy, let me tell you what was taught in psychology. Yeah, no, we did a subject on African psychology. And she says, it's everything you've told me. They got all the information out of John Mbiti. Yeah, it's like, oh, Trinity of Sin by Yusuf Turaki. This guy's got, I think, 3 PhDs, professor in Nigeria. You must read this guy's book, The Trinity of Sin. It rocked my world for me to understand sin better just on a basis of being human, let alone understanding the African concept of sin. You know, African Christian ethics, wonderful friend of mine, Professor Sam Kinyu from Nigeria. I figured that out, professor of ethics in Nigeria. Amazing man. Great friend. I mean, you know, reading these people is just for me saying to me, John, you don't even understand the people that you want to walk in fellowship with in unity. But can I tell you what's even worse? When I talk about these things and I lecture on these things when we do worldview classes, the African folks sit there and say, John, yes, that's true, that's true, that's true. How do you know that? And I say, because I've read these books. Why don't you go and read it? Yeah, because when you read it, you understand it, and you begin to realize, to say, oh, wait a minute. There are things that I believe that I don't know that I believe, but it's so deeply embedded in me that I need to change. And he has this, would you like to hear a heartbreaking example? So this young guy comes to our Bible college. Man, he studies the whole Bible, 66 books of the Bible. Man, he knows the scripture. He was the only student in the whole class that studied the Bible before he came to Bible college. He stays the second year. We do apologetics, we do worldview, we do philosophy, we do ethics, we do systematics, we do all of that. Towards the end of last year, he comes to me and says to me, John, why do you whiteys always think us Africans are thieves? I said, all right, it's a fair question, it's good. So let me tell you, I'll ask you some questions. Let's see what your thinking is. I said to him, so here you are in the building where we're working. It's a church building. And as you're cleaning, you pick up a cell phone there. I said, what do you do with it? He says, well, I take it to the secretaries. I hand it in. I said, I picked up the cell phone. I said, so I try and find the person to who it belongs. I said, okay. I said, so now you're cleaning, and you pick up an envelope that fell in between 2 cushions. And I said, no name on it. You pick up this envelope, and you look inside, 10,000 rand cash. What do you do with it? He said, I'll take it for me. I said, but why? Why do you take it for you? You take the cell phone and hand it in. You won't take the money and hand it in. Why? But you're a Christian. I thought you studied philosophy. I thought you studied the Bible. You know theology. You know ethics. You know all of that. But it's good luck. Now you want to know why white people would say you have an African person working in your house. And okay, they're white people. So now you take something, you take a little bit more home, and the white person, the white Christian says about the black Christian, dishonest thieves. Because in the white person's mind is, no, I bought that, it's mine. If you want it, you ask me. You don't just take it. And if you pick up anything lying in my house, money, whatever, yeah, it's not yours, it's mine. You come and you say, this is it. Okay, but why would we think that way? Now, you read John and Beatty, traditionally, in African religion, ethics is relative. It's relative. Right and wrong is relative. Yeah. So you see, what we then do is we carry over, we come into the kingdom of God, but we carry over vestiges of our worldviews into the kingdom. Right? So, you know, I mean, like, what do you think? A white South African, they're not saved, they get born again. What do? They come into the church, and then, God blesses me, and then, all right, and they say, oh, fantastic, yeah. God just blessed my business, awesome, fantastic, great. Anybody know what a minimum wage is in South Africa for people to have a life? Anybody know? Sorry? No, a livable wage. 10,000 rand should be the minimum wage in this country based on the price of everything. Yeah, 10,000 rand. So now you got people that's like, oh, you know, yeah, no, still pay my workers 1,000, 1,500, and it's like, you know, they got to, you know. I mean, I asked the white audience one day, I said to them, I got a question for you. How much money would you be willing to take as a salary to pick up, to work on the rubbish lorries that come and collect the garbage? Everybody shook their heads. No, they won't even, no money. You know, and those people were striking some years ago for a livable wage, 5,000 rand. You see, there are things that we don't realize. We're not understanding what's really going on. And we've got a lot of soul searching to do if we think we are going to transform our country and establish justice. And we have to go through this. All right, moving on. Dieter, everybody, so I can go. I'll just go into the next one. And everybody, you know, they'll say, thank God he's done. We can keep quiet now. All right, so where does the gospel come into all of this? We need to note the following. Next slide. First of all, we have to note, just push, ethnocentrism must adapt. What we mean by ethnocentrism is our practices and the value we attach to practices, just common understanding of how we relate to each other. There are ways in which we relate that must change so that we honor, if we are going to show honor across our divided communities. There are things that are going to have to change. Right? And again, those things are so deep, but ethnocentrism must adapt. So one day I was accosted by some guys, some young African guys on the streets of Sunnyside in Pretoria. So I said to the guys, all right, I'll give you 5 minutes of my time. Tell me what you want to sell me. Then you give me 5 minutes of your time so that I can talk to you about what I want to talk about. I said, great. So anyway, they talk about insurance and this and that. And the next thing, after 10 minutes, I said, guys, I appreciate it. I've already got insurance, but thank you for sharing with me. I said, now you owe me 10 minutes. I said, okay. So here we are talking, 3 African guys. Now as we start talking, start pushing the issues of the gospel. Then I start talking about the politics and the then President Jacob Zuma and a lot of things like this. And I said, but the gospel says, and when you here in the city, you live like this. And this one young guy said, yeah, that's here in the city. When I go home, I go back to my culture. Well, wait a minute, but what is your culture when you're back home? It's African traditional religious views of life, which is not biblically Christian. Yeah. You see, so, we're going to have to realize that things must change. But what? The only way we're going to do it is if we all take this seriously to start saying, let's learning from each other. Let me try and understand myself as best as what I can. And you understand yourself as best as what you can. And I'll understand you as best as what you can. And you understand me as best as what you can. And then we see what can change and what must change, especially if we're going to say we're going to be a multi-ethnic church. Because definitely certain things need to change regarding practices. Next, ritual practices must be evaluated. What are ritual practices? Marriage, birth, coming of age, funerals. Right? Are we going to find each other around that to say, well, look, these rituals must change to be more biblical? And what is an expression of it? That can only be done when you've got minds engaging in discussion to understand each other, to understand what the gospel says and how we then ought to engage this. And I'll tell you what, in my experience over the years with my African brothers and sisters and Westerners, the African community, the way they deal with grief and anguish of soul is far healthier than your Westerners. Because the whole community carries the burden of pain and suffering. For us in the West, yeah, okay, they died, whatever. Have a pill. You mustn't cry too much, you make us uncomfortable. After 4 days, we have a funeral. Yeah, you don't want to pay too much money there on the morgue. Which I guess it's wise. All right, then you come to the funeral. Okay, we have the funeral, there's a time. Okay, finish crying now, go and have food, get over it. Moving on with our lives. The African community says, no, we weep with the one who has suffered loss. We carry it. The community absorbs the pain and the anguish and the sorrow. And then people come out healed. Now you want to ask me, who do I rather want to have as friends when it comes to death? My African friends, by all means. Because it's pop a pill. You're a white kid. Just get over yourself now. That's enough crying and mourning. Pop a pill, otherwise we get an injection, calm you down so you can function and continue with your work. How do I know? Oh, I've been there. Anyway, next. A new community practices must be developed, and especially by the church. We say we're going to love Christ and we want transformation, we want justice, we want to come together. We're going to need to rethink this. Next. Mutual sharing must take place to enrich a community and transform society. You see, nobody... Dita, I'm sorry, you might not invite me back. I might be upsetting everybody here. But I just raise these questions to say, guys, are we at least going to talk about it? Because if we don't talk about it, nothing's going to change in our country. Nothing. We're going to end up probably with a bloody civil war. But if we're not going to come together and get our hearts together. Next slide. The gospel demands, which command is the greatest of all, says the scribe to Jesus. And Jesus says, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Right there, you have to rethink your view on that which is eternal. You read Yusuf Turaki, you read Mutwa, you read John Mbiti. God created intermediaries. You cannot know God because He's created intermediaries that communicate to you. No, there is one mediator between God and man, and that is the man Christ Jesus. All the so-called spiritual beings and entities have got no power anymore because Christ triumphed over them in the cross. So why do believers sitting in the pews in the church go down to the witch doctor at the end of the week before they come to church on Sunday? Because there are fundamental beliefs that is not what the Bible is teaching. And then you look at us, and I think, oh, okay, now if I upset you, I'm sorry. I'm just telling you, calling it the way I see it. Because, somebody comes to me one day, this young guy, chartered accountant, got his own business, and he says to me, John, I believe that anybody that is poor because they want to, because God promises to bless everybody and make everybody rich. Really? Oh, really? He's got no concept and understanding of God and creation. He does not understand a biblical view of things. Because not everybody is a businessman. Because a businessman should not be president. Because you can see what happens when your president is a businessman. He thinks of everything through business. Look, he makes some good decisions. Others, you'll just say, oh, I wonder. Right? We had a philosopher as a president. And I mean, like under his rule, our economy boomed. And then he was ousted. And then a local chieftain who was a shepherd boy became president. And what happened? He fell into African traditional religious ways of doing things, and it destroyed our country's economy. We're still trying to recover from it. It's a worldview. It's a culture. When you read John Mbiti, you read Credo Mutwa, you look at what's going on, it's like, I get it. It's the worldview working itself out. That's all. So now, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, right? Let me give you just this good definition for heart. It's the center of one's thinking and affections, that which is closest to who I am. Your soul is your heart is your cardia, soul is your psyche or psyche. It's the source of one's desires and feelings. The mind is the thinking and understanding. Strength is one's energy or ability. All of that must latch onto God. Theology, knowing God for who He is, and having the truth shape and shift my understanding of God. Foundational. Now look, I'm just putting it out there, and I understand the struggle of the church. Pastors only have so much time on a Sunday morning. Look, tell you all about church liturgy too, but now is not the time. But we miss what the role of church liturgy, and then we don't understand the role of theological training in the week that all Christians should come to. Because in your theological courses in the week, you should be taught about who God is and what you need to necessarily know about the God of the Bible, and then lay aside ideas that are contrary to that revelation. We need that. But it's like Simon said, oh no, just love everybody. See, next point. The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Come on. You love everybody. We're all Christians, yeah. You love me the way you love yourself, right? But what happens if I'm not like yourself? What happens if I've got some ideas and practices that you're thinking, what? You're not a Christian. And then I'm thinking, no, but I love you like I love myself. And then I look at the way you respond to the way I love you, and I'm like, oh, really? I thought you're a Christian. Right? Understanding culture helps us with this. The gospel demands this of us. That, yeah, I want to say to all the non-white folk, it is time for you to say, I am going to educate myself because I'm going to take these whiteys out. I'm going to undercut their arrogance because I'm going to show them I'm smart. I know what they know and more than what they know. I mean, yeah, I'll be honest with you, white folk, we're pretty patronizing. Oh, yeah, just that person again. I live in Pretoria. I go over to Joburg now and then. I visit Cape Town. You know, I go around to a friend of mine township. I go to multiracial churches. You know, when people are really honest, I mean, I don't mind people being honest, as long as they don't mind me also saying, okay, but we need to come to Christ now, so let's lay that aside and take something new on. Let's be honest. Let's not kid ourselves. Rather say, John, you're racist because you say this and this, and then we can say, okay, but what do you mean by racism, one? And two, why is what I'm saying not right? Because I wouldn't know if you're not going to challenge me on it. You have to, and I have to challenge you on stuff. And if I'm willing to learn, oh, my word. So what is love? Simon asked the question. To will the highest good of another. That's love. Yeah, stop and think about that for a moment. To will the highest good of another. So if I love you, how am I going to respond to you? In all my engagements and interaction, I'm going to want the highest good for you. Not your vices and little sins. No. That which is required for you to be a good human being, as God wants you and me to be. Yeah. That's why Suzette was speaking about virtue. Yeah. What does it mean to be virtuous? To be virtuous means to have this prudence, wisdom, justice, and steadfastness. Prudence. Think twice before you speak. Because what is the right thing to say in this given situation? Out of all the truth there is to know, what's the right thing to say now? And then, once I've said it, what is the right action to perform in this situation so that I don't behave in a way unbecoming? And then, in acting in this way, I must give the other person that which is their due, that which belongs to them by virtue of who they are. Yeah, and if somebody's sinful and wrong, the loving thing to be would say to them, my dear friend, you make a decision like this and you do that. The long-term consequences for your life is going to be this. Please don't do that. Now, I will help you change and transform. I will pray with you. I'll get you a counselor. I'll do whatever to help you get free from that. But what you are doing is not right. It's going to hurt you, and it's going to destroy the people of God, and it's going to destroy everybody that you come in contact with. But I'm here to help you. I will stand by you in it. That's justice. Steadfastness is I walk with you through whatever it is for as long as necessary until you can say, God, John, God has changed me. I feel so liberated. That issue, God has set me free from it, and He's brought something totally new into my being. I'm amazed. Thank you so much. And I say, great, let's keep going. Who's next? Who's the next one we're going to love? Oh, and I tell you, you think people would appreciate this? I ran a Bible college for, what, almost 15 years. No. Some say yes, some say moving on. And it's like, okay, then you move on. But if you move on from what is good and right, you're going to run into problems, because I will resist you. And I will resist you because you're wrong and you refuse to repent and change. Then I will be your worst enemy. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. Are you? Yeah, I mean, like, we got to get there if we're going to see transformation. All right, so then the next question is this one. What is justice? Any takers? A habit whereby a man renders to each one his due by a constant and perpetual will. Now, who listens here to Jordan Peterson? Let me tell you one. Respect is to be earned. Right? You have to earn my respect. Yeah, right. Can we just think about this one for a moment? I might go on a little bit longer because I want us to try and understand this one. So God, we have to work in the sight of God to earn God's respect for us. Right? Stop and think then about the claim. So now Jesus comes into the earth, and how does Jesus treat people? With the highest respect. But he does not pander to their corruption and their sin. If you respond rightly to him, you experience his salvation. But everything that he says to you is to warn you of an impending judgment. Yeah. Jesus respected everybody. Why? Because they deserve it? No, because of who they are by design. They are made in God's image. That's why I respect people. Yeah. You don't have to earn it from me. I give it because of who you are. You're made in God's image. Now you can do stuff that diminishes your dignity by all means, to your own detriment. Stop and think about this. Who's here has memorized the crucifixion scene out of the Bible? Sorry, what's your name? Gabriel, the angel, dude. Yeah, memorize it. Because when you memorize a crucifixion scene, what stands out so dramatically is who is on trial. And when you look at who is on trial and you see what they do to him, what do you think? How dare you do it to him? How dare you? None of us think, Jesus, yeah, no, they showed him to be a dog. The way they treated him just diminished his dignity, honor, and value. No, the way they treated him on trial, the way they spoke of him and mocked him, Jesus is just a stupid nobody. None of us think that. We all think, how could you have done that to him? And all that happens when we look at the crucifixion scene is that we recognize those that did it to him deserve the judgment that would come. Because how dare you have done that to somebody so great, who never even then, he could have called on the powers of heaven. You read Matthew 27, the Father would have sent 12 legions of angels to deliver him. And he says, but how then will I fulfill the Father's purpose? And he gave himself into their hands. See, this is a gospel that must change us, right? And so when we're looking at justice, we need to recognize this. Now, there are two kinds of justice. You have commutative justice, which is to make right what is wrong, or fairness in exchanges. And then you've also got distributive justice. And distributive justice is to render to each person his or her due fair allocation in a community. I mean, and now we are looking in our country for justice. Can I tell you some of the deeper worldview issues that are at play in our country that are both cultural and greed and a lust for power? What's the whole thing of expropriation land without compensation about? Right. So as I've just tracked this thing, Why do some African folk want their ancestral land? Anybody know? Because rooted in African traditional religion is the belief that where your ancestors were buried, you must go walk over their graves to keep... So I'm actually telling the truth, eh? Yeah, that's the way it is, yeah. You got to go and walk over their graves to keep them alive and to make them part of the community of the living dead. So there's this religious understanding of my ancestral land. Right? Then, do you know that do you know why else there's a taking of the land? Greed. Because, I mean, like, there was just an account of a guy, they wanted to take his farm, I think, up in Limpopo, and the government came and they said to him, here's the documents, we're taking your land and everything, only to discover that the politicians behind it wanted that land for mineral rights for no other reason, because they wanted farming to take place there, and it's a farm for hunting. Yeah. Right? What else is going on? My voorgeslagte se bloed lê in hierdie grond, nie waar nie, Piet. My ancestors' blood has been spilt for this land to protect it, and I will not have their memory desacralized. Do you see what's really at the hearts of people? Forget about the arguments. Listen to the cry of the heart. I don't know if you saw this one. Oh, man, I tell you, I don't have time to watch the news now, but man, I used to watch so much of it. So this one young guy got up at one of these hearings, I think it was in Joburg, and he says this to the panel there. He says to them, look, I do not want any land back. Rather give me the cash value of it so that I can start a business and to give myself a better future in the country. Isn't that fascinating? You know, and there are so many of these things at play in the issue. And how are we going to engage it? Here's the bad news. You have to read Afrikaner history. You have to read African history. You've got to understand African traditional religious values. Then you've got to understand the question of, okay, if you take this land, right, how is it going to serve the whole population? And we think the issues are simple. And I tell you what, I will take the land, if I'm greedy, I'll take the land back by any means. And if my people's blood was shed there, I will protect it at every means. Those are some of the struggles we are facing. Do you know what Desmond Tutu said back in 1993, 91 already, about land expropriation? Anybody know what he said? He said it on national television. This is what he said. He said, yes, we need to give land back, but we must be realistic with the challenges in the country. We cannot take land from farmers that are feeding the country, but we need to look at other land that is not being used to provide life to the country, and then we need to see how we can attach such land for the benefit of the people to own land. That's what Desmond Tutu said. Where are we now in the year 2025? Do you see some of the challenges that we are faced with? All righty. You want a Q&A at the end. Okay. Let me just quickly then go through this next. You know, when we deal with natural law versus revealed law, there is a thing of natural law. Natural law is the way things are. Family. The nuclear family. You've got a mom and a dad, and you cannot be you if it's not your mom and your dad. You would be somebody else, and you wouldn't be. And that nuclear family makes up society, because all of those nuclear families come together, and you then have got a community. But then for that community to live together, you need institutions that help manage the community and the resources that the community brings and gives. Right? The question then is, do these institutions actually serve people or not? Okay. Would you like me just to mention to you briefly what's at the heart of corruption? Your view of God. Because if you believe that the Great Spirit has got intermediaries, you need to have your mediator on earth that appeals to these spirits, these intermediaries, that will appeal to the Great Spirit for your well-being here on earth, and so you know his wisdom. Right? So that person has got power. And so he goes in and he says, okay, well, all right, $10,000, and then they say they'll listen to you. So you pay me 10,000. Go, come back, and I say, all right. The message is they've heard what you've asked. You must pay them an extra 15,000, and then this and this and this will such and such will happen. So now you've already paid me 25,000, and I'm saying, man, my wallet is full. Next. What do you want? Yeah, let me just go. It's going to cost you 10. Great. Let me go and ask quickly. Come back. Because of our understanding of God, our understanding of how the Spirit will affect my good or bad fortune on the earth. So now what happens? I get a position in government. I've got power. So how do I treat people? Yeah, I've got the power. You want the passport? Yeah. Give me 5. You'll have a passport tomorrow. Or don't worry. You can wait. Whenever. We'll see. Yeah. 3 months later. Where's my passport? Oh, somewhere in the system. Yeah. Our country has got such a big government. Why? Because getting into government is a way to get yourself materially wealthy. There was a whole thing in the newspaper. People were studying PhDs in theology at the University of Pretoria so that having a PhD, they could get into a government office because that's the requirement. But if I believe God is so kind, he created everything and he blessed them, I say, God, between you and me, what are we going to do? And then how do we serve the community? And as the community gets together, and each one does their role because they understand God's goodness and grace, the community thrives. So, you can talk about corruption. If you don't deal with the spiritual reality of the gospel, the true knowledge of God, we will never see anything change in our country. We are going down. Incidentally, my last sentence. Do you know, out of the 10 most corrupt country in the world, do you know what the religion is in the first 8? Islam. It's all about power. Whereas you look at Christ in the wilderness being tempted by the devil. The cross, that's where I'm going. That's how I win people's hearts. All righty, so I think I've said enough, Dieter, right? Yes? Good. All right, good. Any questions? I don't know if I've got any answers, but hey, maybe ask a good question and we can all learn something.
Ask us tomorrow.
Very interesting. Learned a lot.
Aligns with everything that we go through every day, especially when it comes to culture. I wanted to check if we can. Is it the will of God for us to challenge the status quo in terms of families? For instance, you know that Africans are more so into ancestral worship.
Yes.
Then you find that you're the only one or two of you in the family who are born again and separated. So,
Right. You see, and here is something what the whites don't understand. We think, like for example, let me tell you, God said to me, well, God saved me. And then I went to my parents and I said, I'm leaving this cult. They were shocked, but they never said anything. Then I said to them, I'm resigning my job and I'm going into missions. And they kept quiet. But my father said, who's going to pay? I said, God will provide. And I went. And they both got, we prayed before they died and they went to be with the Lord. But they never understood what I was doing my entire life. But I was always welcome in their home. Always. Right? But My African friends, when they say, Jesus is my Lord, those practices, I will not take part in it. I'm walking away. What happens?
Rejection.
What does that look like when you say rejection?
Nobody wants to talk to you. They always check your life, how is it going? One slightly thing goes wrong, look at you, look at your God. You are all alone. Nobody wants to support you about anything. You only will come when you bring something at the table, like money.
Yeah. So now you want to say, all right, yeah, we've got this church here. It's not in an African township, right? So now, African folk come here on Sunday, pray, give their hearts to the Lord, and then they go back home and you say, Jesus is Lord. And they're like, yeah, that's okay. Just sit down and keep quiet. We're just going to, make some stuff for their ancestors. And you say no. And then they say, what? Now, you've given your life to Christ. Where does it leave you? So now you have to ask yourself the question then. Is there in this community a sense of saying, whoa, you gave your life to Christ, so they kicked you out. We'll take you in. So we're going to have a house. For all those that are rejected by their families. We will make sure you got a job to help you out. But we are going to teach you and train you to become an active member of this community, and you're going to contribute to the well-being of the whole community. But you see, as white people, we don't understand what you go through. So you know what? We're like, yeah, whatever. But why don't we know this? Well, I can tell you. But would you like to tell us why we don't know that? Tell us why. Why don't we know this?
We are not united as the church, as the body of Christ. We don't commune. We still come with our own cultural values, like you said.
Yeah.
They come with their own, we come with our own, but we don't sit down and share.
Mm-hmm.
What is your background like? What was my background before Christ? Then now we are one in spirit. How do we practice our own culture as children of God?
Yeah.
How we bring in.
Because we don't talk about these things. We don't really talk about the pain and the anguish that we go through. Because let me tell you, it's uncomfortable. Because now suddenly you come and tell me that, and now I must help you. What am I going to do when I don't have all the resources that you need? What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? But now I'm also, trusting God to provide. And it's like, but how am I going to, at the end of the day, what wins out? My self-interest or my fear and insecurity wins out over saying, but wait a minute, let's help. But it's again, because if we don't understand, each other, and the thing is, having read, I hope to do a PhD on African traditional religious philosophy when I'm done with my master's now, because that is something that if we don't address it in our country, it's never going to change. Because we need to strike at the root, but we have to communicate the gospel and the truth in such a way that people feel the discomfort, but the words sound right. And that is difficult. It's difficult. Now, let me tell you another thing. What? All right. Who here has ever grown up just existing in the house and never receiving any kind of affection whatsoever from a parent? What's that experience called? Rejection. Oh. Yeah. And what's that pain that you carry? It's deep. It's deep, yeah. All right. So how do you minister to somebody that carries that depth of pain? Do we know? Can we even begin to think what somebody like that goes through? And how we're going to lead them in the power of Christ to restoration and healing? You see, we don't talk each other. We don't try and find this out about each other's lives. Now, yeah, let me not make that comment. Focus, John. So, you are right in that, one. And two, there's also this thing is, traditionally as Africans, it's like you come and you must be welcomed into the community. It's a general, right? So this friend of mine, Frans Masenya, when he came to this 23 white Afrikaners Bible college and everybody's white and Afrikaans, he walked in there and I was watching him to see what is he going to do. Frans walked in And he introduced himself to everybody. He introduced himself to everybody in the church. And he said, I will make myself welcome. Yeah, I'm not going to wait for these whiteys to welcome me. He knew what was going on in everybody's life, from the leaders in the church down to the person working in the garden. White and black across the board. He knew everybody. And we spoke about this after. I said, Franz, I've been watching you. He said, yes, John. I said to him, so tell me your way. And he said, that's what I did. And I said, I've been watching you because I've been waiting for you to come and speak to me, but you don't. But it's okay. Today, I mean, he's my friend, man. He's my brother. But there is a cultural thing that needs to overcome. So from African folk, you need to understand us, right? So when I walk into somewhere, I'm new, what do I do? I'm John. What's your name? Risa, nice to meet you. So, Risa, where are you from? And then I start talking to Risa. Oh, my name's John, and you are? Oh, Pete, nice to meet you. What do Africans do? Not that. You want to hang out with whiteys, that's what you do. And then when you come in, sorry, what's your name? Gift. When you shake my, no. It's getting there. Gift, how are you? You don't come, how are you? I've said this to African guys that come and study with us. I said to them, you're going to come in here and you're a bunch of white Afrikaners. You walk in and you go and you say, hi, how are you? I tell you, so they get there and then they do it. Just that one little thing. I said to them, and so what happened? And they say, man, they come in and they grab those white oakies' hands and they squeeze and they watch their face and they're like, oh, yeah, no, nice to meet you. And just that little thing, they welcome him in. Right? You've got to learn about white, us white Westerners, how we do things, and you'll see. Because it's not just about us changing, it's about you guys also changing. You see? It's a challenge, isn't it? Sorry, Dieter. All right, sorry. Dieter says I speak too much. I do speak too much. I do apologize. Thank you so much. May the Lord bless.